Something in you went quiet, and you probably blamed yourself. Maybe it hits on a Saturday. Nothing scheduled. Someone asks what you feel like doing. The honest answer is nothing. Not because you are sad. You still get up. You still clear the inbox. You still show up where you should. You just cannot find the part that used to care. Here is what nobody says. That gray, flat feeling is not a character flaw. It is not laziness. It is not you failing at being a person. Across America in 2026, this is close to the default. And once you see the math behind it, the shame looks absurd. You are not built to feel this way. You were dropped inside a machine that manufactures it. Most videos call this a mental health condition. Then they hand you a breathing exercise. I want to do the opposite. I want to show you the arithmetic, because the arithmetic is where the real story hides. You are not broken. You are responding correctly to a rigged equation. Let me walk you through it. And I know the reflex. You have seen a dozen videos like this one. Doom on a loop. A voice telling you the sky is falling and selling you the falling. So let me be plain about the deal. I am not here to scare you. I am here to hand you the receipt. Every number I use is one you can look up yourself. If the math does not hold, close the tab and walk away. But I think it holds. And I think that is the harder thing to sit with. Start with the scale. These figures rarely sit in one room. They get reported alone. One at a time, so you never feel the full weight. About half the American workforce has quietly stopped trying. No resignation letter. No dramatic exit. They stay in the chair. They stop investing. More than half of adults, 54%, feel cut off from the people nearby. 90% call it a nationwide mental health emergency. Consumer confidence just dropped to a 46-year low. In every year, 264,000 Americans die from what researchers label deaths of despair, not illness. What gives out is the reason to keep living. Sit with that last one. 264,000 people a year. Gone because meaning ran dry. That is not a rounding error. That is the shape of ordinary life right now. And almost nobody has a word for the thing there inside. The word is languishing. It went mainstream in April 2021. The psychologist Adam Grant wrote about it in the New York Times. That essay became the paper's most read piece of the whole year, not because it was loud, because it was exact. Grant called it the middle child of mental health, the one nobody keeps an eye on. Here is why the name matters. Languishing is not depression. Depression is when you cannot function at all. It is not burnout. Burnout is when life demands more than you have. It is not anxiety. Anxiety is a brain stuck running threats on a loop. Languishing is the absence of well-being. A slow leak of purpose. A quiet distance from your own life. Now here is where I break from the usual story. Grant first pinned this on the pandemic. Temporary. A phase we would move through once the world reopened. Then the world reopened. And it did not lift. It settled in. It became the baseline. The numbers that followed prove it. The American Psychological Association ran its Stress in America survey in 2025. 54% of adults said they felt isolated. Half said they felt left out. Those figures did not fall when life restarted. They climbed. Gallup found only 33% of workers feel engaged in the job. 2 out of 3 clock in and feel nothing. Not hatred. Not passion. A blank. And a 2026 study covered staff at more than 100,000 companies. 88 million people. The question it asked was blunt. Does the job mean anything to the one performing it? For 2 out of 3, the answer came back no. Now sit with what that really means. It is easy to hear those numbers and picture people who simply stopped caring. But that reads it backwards. Most did not stop caring. They got tired. Tired of working harder every year and watching the reward shrink. You do not walk away from a game you are winning. You walk away from one that keeps sliding the goalposts. The disengagement is not apathy. It is a verdict. So the official story says you have a condition. And that framing is useful to someone. Because if the problem lives in your head, the fix is yours alone. Quiet and private, on a couch you may not afford. But watch what the disengagement actually does. It does not stay at the office. And this is where it gets darker and a lot more deliberate. The brain that shuts down at work keeps no separate battery for the rest of you. It runs everything off one wire. When the reward system dims at your desk, it does not flip back on at your door. You carry the flatness home, into dinner, into the weekend, into the things that were supposed to be yours. Weekly church attendance slid from 70% in 1999 down to 45% by 24. Union and club and neighborhood membership sits at historic lows. 88 million people sat out the 2024 election. Birth rates have never been lower in the country's whole record. And the hobby business follows where people spend purely for fun. It logged drops in every big category from 2019 to 2025. This is not only about jobs. People are quietly checking out of their whole lives, sometimes in the crisis sense. The deaths of despair prove plenty have crossed that line. More often, it is the fog, the kind where you keep operating, the here but not here kind. Sit with that word. Functioning, not thriving, not building, just functioning. The bare minimum a person manages while something drains the meaning out of them. Dollar by dollar, hour by hour. And the cruelest part is how ordinary it looks from outside. Nobody sees a crisis in that. They see a person getting through the week, which is exactly why nobody arrives to help. There are 3 machines doing the draining. The first goes after your brain. The second goes after your bank account. The third, the Surgeon General has called a public health emergency. Let me take them one at a time. If any of this is landing, tell me where in the comments. I read them. Machine 1. Your reward system was captured on purpose. For roughly 200,000 years, the biggest pleasure a human brain could reach was simple. Food after a long hunt. A fire on a freezing night. Those moments lifted dopamine somewhere between 50 and 100% above baseline. That was the whole range you were tuned for, and it was plenty. 4 industries changed all of that in about 30 years. The engineered products that push dopamine to 150% above baseline. Sometimes 500. Delivered to your pocket, your pantry, your medicine cabinet, and your phone. Biology was never going to win that fight. Social platforms run on a trick called variable ratio reinforcement. The identical mechanic that keeps people glued to a slot machine. The reward is not the hook. The uncertainty is, your brain fires more dopamine chasing a maybe than collecting a sure thing. Every time you reach to see if someone replied, you get a little burst. Not on the reply, on the reach for it. The reaching is the hit. The average American grabs the phone 96 times a day. Then food. Ultra-processed stuff now accounts for 58% of what the average adult eats in a day. It is tuned to the bliss point. That precise blend of sugar, fat, and salt that switches off your body's signal to stop. Every bite spikes higher than whole food can reach. And the companies behind them pour enormous resources into keeping them on your mind. Then gambling. In 2018, the Supreme Court threw out the federal sports betting ban. Slot machine mechanics dropped into an app on every phone. In 2023 alone, sports bets topped $120 billion. Then opioids. Lab-made compounds that swamp the reward centers beyond anything in nature. Since 1999, overdoses have killed 700,000 people here. Fentanyl now tops the list for anyone aged 18 to 45. Here is the thread through all 4. They do not just hand you pleasure, they raise its price. Permanently. Neuroscientists call it down regulation. Flood the system with these hits enough, and the brain trims its own dopamine receptors. Your baseline sinks. The stimulation it takes to feel anything climbs. And the things that once satisfied you stop landing. A talk that goes somewhere. A walk in daylight. Dinner you cooked yourself. They feel like nothing. The clinical name is anhedonia. The joy drains out of whatever used to deliver it. Not a mood, not a mindset. A physical change 330 million Americans now carry through the day. Working, commuting, scrolling, eating, scrolling, sleeping, half wondering why the color washed out of everything. But that is only the first machine. A second one runs at the same time. And this is where the money walks in. Machine 2. Survival is eating the part of you that thinks. Biology has a name for it. Allostatic load. The running total of what long-term stress does to a body and a brain. The stress response fires when danger shows up, then quiets once danger clears. But if the danger never clears, the system stays lit. The result is not a dramatic collapse. It is a slow drain. Your emotional range narrows. Your capacity for curiosity and pleasure and hope erodes week by week, until you are technically functioning but not really alive. The bottom 60% of the country lives under exactly this load, and the numbers that built it are specific. American credit card debt now sits at $1.252 trillion. The average rate is 23.79%. No higher figure exists in the Fed's own records. 111 million Americans cannot clear their balance each month. Let me show you what that rate does, because the headlines skip this part. Take a $6,000 balance, roughly the national average. Make the minimum payment. Of every $120 you send, 119 vanishes into interest. A single dollar reaches the actual balance. You hand over $120 a month to knock the debt down by 1. That is not paying it off. That is being farmed. Run that forward. A full year of payments. 12 months of scraping that 120 together. And the balance barely moves. You did everything right. You paid on time. You never missed. And the statement looks almost identical. That is the moment the fog makes sense. F-word went in. Nothing came out. Your brain notices. It always notices. And it quietly files the lesson that trying changes nothing. Stay with me here, because this is the number that reframes the rest. You are not careless with money. You are being processed by it. And that is only the card. Gas runs $4.55 a gallon nationally. Groceries are up more than 25% since 2020. Rent on a one-bed in a big city tops $1,700 a month. A family health plan runs north of $24,000 a year. Childcare lands between $15,000 and $25,000. Total consumer debt just set a record, $18.19 trillion. And the savings rate is 4%. No cushion. No buffer. Every dollar is spoken for before it lands. And notice who this catches. It is not only the people at the bottom, it is the household that looks fine on paper. Good jobs, a decent address, and still one broken transmission from a spiral. When there is no buffer, every surprise becomes a crisis. And when every surprise is a crisis, the body never gets to stand down. That is the trap wearing the mask of a normal life. Now here's the part almost nobody connects. Each of those numbers is not just a money problem. It is a thinking problem. One study out of Harvard and Princeton found scarcity does something worse than drain your wallet. It dulls the mind itself. Running the arithmetic of not enough shaves, 13 to 14 points off your working IQ. Which bill goes first? Is there fuel to reach Friday? What gets dropped this month? Picture running the day on zero sleep. Same deficit. 45% of American households could not make ends meet. That is roughly 150 million people, carrying a tax in their intelligence nobody assigned. And nobody is lifting. Think about what that tax buys. Your brain cannot run survival math and build long-term hope at once. Both pull from the same prefrontal fuel. Stretch that fuel thin and survival wins. Because hope is optional. Rent is not. So hope slides to tomorrow. Then the sliding becomes a habit. And eventually the person is not choosing to quit on the future. They just cannot find room in their own head to hold one. Take a man I will call Cole. He is 34, works in logistics, clears $52,000 a year. Weekends used to hold watercolors. Nothing museum-worthy, just a thing that belonged to him. Sundays meant ringing up friends he had known for years. He kept a running list of places he meant to visit someday. Then a hospital bill 3 years back swallowed his savings whole. Card debt rushed in behind it, and the rent notched up. The car needed work he could only half cover. These days, his Sundays are a budget, shuffled and reshuffled, hunting for a spare $20. The brushes stay in the drawer. He calls it a time problem. The quieter truth is different. The mental space that held painting is now rented to one question. Which bill can wait one more week? The wish to paint did not die. It got crowded out, sold off by the math of staying afloat, $1 at a time, until only the necessities had any room left. Cole is not a rare case. He sits near the middle of the line. And the reason it hides so well is simple. None of it looks like an emergency. He clocks in. He pays the minimum. He scrolls after dark. He keeps going. A nation slowly numbing to its own life does not read as a crisis. It reads as another Tuesday. Take a breath here. The third machine ties the first two together. And if this is clicking, a like genuinely pushes it to people who need it. Machine 3. It is not loneliness. It is something harder to fix. Back in 2023, the Surgeon General put out an official warning about loneliness. Not over discomfort. Over death. The warning found that about half of American adults live with measurable isolation. Some 165 million people. And the health cost is concrete. A 29% higher risk of heart disease. A 32% higher risk of stroke. Dementia risk for older adults jumps 50%. Add it up, and the toll on mortality rivals a 15 cigarette a day habit. Half the country. A pack's worth of harm. And there was no warning label anywhere. But that warning leaned on an assumption that people still want to connect, that knocking down the obstacles would fix it. The evidence says otherwise, and it is stranger than that. People are not describing connection they cannot reach. They are describing the absence of wanting it at all. And that is a different problem entirely. Old-fashioned loneliness behaves like thirst. It aches, you drink. It fades. What is spreading now has a colder name in the research. Social anhedonia. No ache at all. The thought of calling a friend brings exhaustion, not pull. A gathering brings dread, not anticipation. Not because you dislike the people, because the part of the nervous system that made contact feel good has been worn flat. By chronic stress. By information overload. By a constant digital imitation of closeness that pays out none of the biology. The Survey Center on American Life has the receipts. Friendlessness has quadrupled since 1990, from 3% up to 12%. Those with 10 or more close friends. That group shrank from 33% to 13%. 1 in 5 single men has nobody close at all. Meanwhile, the typical American burns 2 hours and 31 minutes a day inside social feed. The feed keeps signaling that bonding is underway, yet not one drop of the real biology fires. Because here is what the screen cannot do. A held gaze lights up the mirror neuron system. Standing close releases oxytocin. Laughing together pulls 2 heartbeats into rhythm. None of that reaches you through glass. But the brain gets the contact signal from the platform. So it stops going out to find the real thing, believing the need is already met. You are not alone because the people vanished. You are alone because the system talked your brain into thinking it already found them. Some of you already feel this and have started fighting it in small ways. leaving the phone in another room, sitting on the porch with someone and letting the quiet be quiet. This sounds like nothing. It is not nothing. It is the nervous system getting one real signal instead of 1,000 fake ones. And the body knows the difference even when the mind has stopped expecting it to. And there is a physical reason the gathering spots dried up. The sociologist Robert Putnam saw the early shape of this. His book, Bowling Alone, laid it out in 2000. Civic life had been sliding since the 1960s. Church, 70% down to 45. Union rolls, once 20%, now 10. The meeting hall, the block club, the weekly card night, all handed over to a feed that mimics a village while quietly preventing one. The way the country is built made it structural. Suburbs drawn around cars. Single-family homes strung to strip malls by highway. No sidewalks. No square. Nowhere to just be without spending money. Garage to office to drive-through and back to garage. The only faces you meet are pixels. Then remote work arrived, marketed as liberation, and accelerated the whole thing by years. Full-time remote workers score lonelier than the ones who drive in. It is not that the office is cozy. The commute simply forced small, unplanned run-ins. The counter worker who remembers your usual. The guy next door asking how the weekend went. Each one barely registers. Stack them up and they hand the brain something it needs. The sense of being known. Strip those away and the brain shifts. The prefrontal cortex, the apathy hub, goes quiet. The amygdala runs hot. Ordinary social moments start to feel faintly dangerous. Isolation retrains the brain to dodge connection. That deepens the solitude, which retrains the brain again. It is a loop that does not break on its own. And this is the part that matters most. A person facing hardship with people around them gets through it. Had that same person the same trouble with nobody near, and often they do not. Every problem here worsens in isolation. The loneliness is not one symptom among many. It is the soil the rest of it grows in. Now let me talk about the generation under 35. Their part gets described wrong more than any other. It is not laziness. It is not entitlement. It is not a character defect. It is a clear-eyed reaction to real data. Take a young woman, call her Elena. 22, about to finish her degree, $86,000 deep in student loans. She fires off applications for entry-level roles. Back come automated rejections from software she can never argue with. So she prices a home in any city where the degree would pay off. To buy the median house, a household needs $110,000 in income. The median household earns $81,000. Run that gap. She starts a full generation of raises behind, and the loans do not just sit quietly. They walk with her to the mortgage desk. A lender lines up her income against her debt. That $86,000 already tips the scale the wrong way. So the loan she would need shrinks, or hardens, or evaporates. The credentialment to open the doors holding it shut instead. She did the sensible thing. She borrowed toward a future. The borrowing turned into a barricade. Next, she prices childcare. $15,000 to $25,000 a year before a single grocery run or doctor visit. Then the figure from the agriculture department. One child raised to 18 runs $300,000. And she says plainly that she cannot tell what the goal even is anymore. The over 40 crowd calls this a mindset. It is not a mindset. It is a sum. The old bargain was clean. Study hard. Earn the degree. Land the job. Buy the house. Raise a family. Assemble a life. Every joint in that chain is snapped. The degree is a loan with a tassel. The job market is grinding out near recession numbers. KPMG flagged it as the weakest year for hiring gains since 2008. The house sits beyond the median wage. And a child at $300,000 tuition still pending is a total that never balances. Elena's parents never met these figures. A high school diploma once bought a factory job with a pension attached. A degree once bought a genuine career track. 10 years of labor once bought the deposit on a home that gained value. Every dependable link between effort and payoff has been severed, and her generation watches it all live. Wages exposed on one app, listings on another, jobs data in their pockets. They are not in the dark. They are the best informed cohort ever to exist, and the information reads, contract void. So they made the only sane move. They quit pretending it held. Their exit does not march or chant. It looks like the fog. Feeds instead of projects. Watching instead of making. And the part the diagnosis skips is this. The numbers are on their side. There is a colder version of this, one they say to each other, rarely out loud to anyone older. If you are not born into money, the ladder may already be gone. Not steeper. Gone. You can argue with a mood. It is hard to argue with a spreadsheet. When effort stops predicting outcome, the rational move is to stop spending effort you cannot spare. They are not quitting on life. They are refusing a bet the house already rigged. And somewhere under the scrolling, most are still waiting for a reason to believe the odds changed. And do not think this stops at the young. Talk to someone who did the whole thing right. A lifetime of showing up. A pension they were promised. A house they paid off. Some of them are fine, and it is worth asking why. The ones who stayed connected tend to come through. The ones who kept a reason to get up. The ones who lived under their means, not at the edge of them. But others did everything the contract asked and still feel the floor drop out. The company gets sold. The savings get eaten by a medical bill. And a person who built a good life looks around late in it and feels nothing where the pride used to be. That is not weakness. That is the same machine, reaching a different generation. The fall does not check your age at the door. Now watch how the machines lock together. None of them works alone. That is what makes the design effective. The captured reward system flattens ordinary pleasure into static. So you grab the synthetic version on sale. The financial pressure eats your bandwidth. So you cannot think past the next payment. The information flood makes every problem feel urgent and unsolvable at once. Researchers call that learned helplessness. And the isolation ensures that even if you cracked it, you would have no one beside you. The bowling night, the labor hall, the Sunday crowd all swapped out long ago. For a feed that profits from you being alone. 330 million of us. Too flat to feel. Too tapped out to plan past this week. Too swamped to move. Too scattered to link up. Call it a mental health crisis if you like, but that misses it. It is an architecture, and it works. And I want to be careful with that word. Architecture. Because it does not require a room full of villains plotting your Tuesday. It just requires systems that each profit from the same thing. Your attention sold. Your debt serviced. Your loneliness monetized by the very feed that deepens it. Nobody has to coordinate it. Each piece simply does what it was built to do. And the sum of those pieces is a person too tired to push back. That is the quiet genius of the thing. It does not feel like a cage. It feels like your fault. And a cage you blame yourself for is one you never try to leave. Which brings me to the thought forming in your head right now. Something along the lines of this is far too large. Too entrenched. Nothing I do could matter against all of that. I need you to hear something before that thought talks you out of moving. That thought is not yours. It was installed. That is learned helplessness in its purest form. The idea that a giant problem demands a giant answer or nothing counts. That is not how the thing works. The fog burns off in small patches. It always has. It thins the evening you cook from raw ingredients and eat something your own two hands assembled. Maybe for the first stretch in ages, your brain answers. Answers to a pleasure no company built to hook you. It thins when the phone goes into a drawer for 2 hours. You sit in the quiet, and the birds are still audible. It thins the day you rap on a neighbor's door. You admit it has been too long. and the surprise on their faces nobody else has in months. Half a minute of that means more than 96 phone checks ever could. All make something. Bread, say. It sounds too plain to count, but people keep circling back to it for a reason. Flour, water, patience. At the end, a real thing you built, not a product built to be sold to you. The hands recall that feeling even after the head has misplaced it. And here is the money part, because that is this channel's whole job. The fog thins when you name the machine feeding on you and pry back one lever. Kill one subscription. Drop that $15 into a jar on the counter. Now it works your side of the table. Stare down the card charging you 23%. See the minimum payment for the snare it is. A few people are sunk past any sane hope. They treat the bankruptcy court as a tool, not a disgrace. And they look into whether that exit is theirs. None of that dismantles the architecture. But it is a hand on a lever. And a hand on a lever is the flat opposite of numb. Here's what no feed can shrink. What no interest rate can bleed dry. What no machine, however tight its build, can pull out of you. You are still standing in it. In the fog. In the squeeze. In the low grinding tiredness a million strangers are hauling around tonight. You reached the end of this. You did not flick away when the easier thing sat a thumb swipe off. That says something the system would rather stay hidden. You still care. It is under the flatness, dimmed by the down regulation, pressed flat by the survival math. But it holds. Because a person who had truly stopped caring would have left long ago. So here's the ask. Not next week. Tonight. Set the phone out of sight. Make something to eat. Message one person you have let slip too long. No agenda, just to say they crossed your mind. Sit in silence 10 minutes with nothing feeding in. Put down one honest line about how you truly feel. None of that undoes a structural crisis. It is no swap for the organizing, the pressure, the deep change this country is owed. But it is the seed of the one thing that has always come first. Someone who is awake. The fog thins one small honest act at a time. Never in one sweep. Like daybreak, too gradual to catch in motion. Then you glance up. The sky has changed color. And it lands that the dark was never going to last. Tell me the single thing here that cut closest. I honestly want to know what stuck.